Okay, I propose that we start.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar that we're organizing together with the CleanMobilEnergy project. And the title is The Role of Local Authorities in Energy Systems for E-Mobility. I think that today we'll go a bit beyond only talking about the role of local authorities, but we'll also talk about the role of the private sector. We'll touch upon that, which is important here. This webinar is a part of the webinar series that we organized in Polis in the course of the last 2 months. This webinar is one of the last webinars. Our last webinar will be organized on Thursday, 19th of November. Do not miss that, and that will be on mass and talking about crossing model borders. And of course, not to forget and to remember that unfortunately our Polis conference is going to take place online this time, so we're going virtual. We were supposed to be in Arnhem, Nottingham in 2 weeks' time. This is also a region that will be represented today. We will talk with the representative of the local and regional authority of the city of Arnhem. But do not forget to register and join us for our conference in about 2 weeks' time. Before we start, just a few rules. It's very important to understand that this webinar is being recorded, okay? And the recordings will be available, will be made available, and will be sent to you as well. If you're not speaking, please keep your microphone muted. And we understand that this discussion will be rather technical if you want. So we hope that we will receive very interesting questions from your side. Please do not hesitate to put them in the Q&A box session. Also state your name and maybe your organization so we can interact in this webinar. And today's discussion will be presented to you by our moderator, but also by an expert in the field, Peter Swart. We will be discussing on a question that is originally or at this current stage is arising from the project called CleanMobilEnergy, as I mentioned before. And this question concerns the locally produced energy and the management of it. I will not tell more. I will would like to introduce our moderator and the expert, as I said, the representative of the city of Arnhem, Peter Swart. You see him in the middle here on this picture, on the slide, but also on the camera. And a few words about Peter. So Peter Swart works for the city of Arnhem as a senior policy advisor for environment. He is responsible for policy on air quality, noise reduction, and sustainable mobility. He is a member of the energy transition team of the program New Energy Made in Arnhem. The sustainable mobility targets of this program include 1,000 charging points by 2023 and 20 fast chargers. Peter is project manager of the Interreg project CleanMobilEnergy, of which Arnhem is the lead partner. So I would like to give the floor to Peter from now on, and I hope to have a very good discussion. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you well. Thanks very much, Sabina. So my name is Peter Swart. That's how you really pronounce it. I work for the city of Arnhem, and I'm also, as Sabina said, the project manager for CleanMobilEnergy. And I would like to introduce the question which is before us today, which is the question about governance, because in the project CleanMobilEnergy, which Hugo will be presenting in a couple of minutes, we stumbled upon the question, who should be in charge? So the question is that renewable energy is produced in the project in Arnhem. by one party. Another party, the city of Arnhem itself, has the battery storage facility, and the consumers are, in our case, all the charge points in our city, and also the shore to ship power in our city, which are owned by other parties. So the question is, should a local government like the city of Arnhem use the energy management system, which we have developed especially for this case, use this, but also operate it? Because the question is that to operate an energy management system and to optimize, for instance, for CO2 reduction or price, we actually should be buying and selling energy. And that's something which sort of collides with the strict energy rules in the Netherlands. I do not know how it is in other countries, but I would like to hear from you, please. But also the question arises when we try to do that, because in the start, like now, we are sort of operating this energy management system, but we do not feel that it is our task to do so. Because maybe you remember that 30 years ago or something, the energy market in the Netherlands was very much owned by the municipal government. So we provided the energy for the houses in our city, but in the meantime, the whole energy market was privatized in the Netherlands. So at this moment, we do not really have anything to say about the energy market. Which brings the question, what should we do? What kind of party? Is it maybe the government itself, which I don't think, but is it another party, like for instance FireandreNetter, who will be talking later, or yet another party, for instance an energy cooperative, like we also have in the Netherlands, who should be sort of turning the knobs and directing the power to the best possible user at the moment. So that could be storing it, that could be sending it to the charging infrastructure, or sending it to the ships, or sending it to the grid. And now I would like to introduce Hugo Niesing, who is supporting Arnhem with the CleanMobilEnergy project. Hugo is the founder of Resourcefully, which is an advisory bureau in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And he actually thought of the idea for CleanMobilEnergy. Hugo has an extensive working record in the field of sustainable resource management, and he has a broad experience as a project and program manager with and for public and private administrations in the Netherlands and Europe. The key activities of Hugo include international project and program management with strong innovation and communication components, strategy development and assessments. And I like to add, it's very much focused also on renewable energy and electric mobility. So Hugo, maybe you can take the floor and explain to our listeners and viewers something about the CleanMobilEnergy and how we stumbled across this question about governance. And if you have questions, as Sabina said, please put them in the question and answers box, and we'll try to answer them at the end of the presentation from Hugo. Okay, Hugo? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the extensive introduction. I think you also touched upon a lot of things of the presentations, but I'll try to keep it interesting. My question is, am I doing my screen sharing, or is there somebody else doing that for me now?
Maybe you should do.
Yeah, you're doing.
Okay. Good. Does it work?
Yeah. I have it on my screen.
Okay, good. Okay.
Sorry, just a second, Hugo. Yes, perfect. Now it's in the presenter's mouth. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Now, this is a presentation which gives the global overview of CleanMobilEnergy. And I see the date is not really correct, but this was a a mutual thing. Peter, thank you very much. But the slides have been updated. So first, a very short story about the philosophy of the project. What we have been observing and still are observing is that most optimizations between renewable energy and the consumption of this renewable energy in the city is mostly one-to-one basis. So sometimes you charge a car at the moment that the sun is producing, waiting or accelerating or storing or doing vehicle to grid kind of things. But to find at a neighborhood scale a full optimization is still a thing which is under development. Before working with Peter on the CleanMobilEnergy pilot, we were setting up together with Elad a smart charge project called Flex Power in Amsterdam. And one of the things that we were seeing that in certain neighborhoods, reducing the amount of energy at peak time of neighborhoods didn't make too much sense. And at the end, you should have an integral view of all energy production, consumption, and especially the flex in consumption and, where possible, storage. That resulted in the idea to set up the CleanMobilEnergy project. We found 4 cities who were all working ambitiously on the growth of their own clean energy amount in their cities, working on clean mobility. And we were facing similar challenges. And that is how we found the consortium to come up with the idea to develop a tool which can forecast, monitor, and act on multiple devices. So storage devices, smart charging, vehicle to grid, being able to put energy into boilers if their energy is in excess there, or wait until early the next morning to charge your car because you want to avoid grid congestion, or you want to fully take the usage of the local energy that you're making. Now, that is resulted in the project, and the central component of that project is a interoperable energy management system, which has been subcontracted to a fully open source company, Open Remote, and is paid by the city partners. Now, this is very brief. The partners, well, maybe not so very relevant. We have Network Polis in order to get the results out. And you see here the 4 cities working together: Arnhem, London, Nottingham, and Schwäbisch Gmünd. Well, as I say, we want to develop a tool which you could basically apply in different city settings and in different devices, and also as much as possible, well, reducing borders and barriers to see if you can use it elsewhere, because this is a topic that all cities in transition are going to deal with. Well, here I see that we have the 3 city pilots which we're working on now: Arnhem, Nottingham, and Schwäbisch Gmünd. And well, this is due to the fact that Transport for London suffers a heavy budget cut and Corona impact, so they will be replaced by another partner probably. Now, in Arnhem, it was already a little bit introduced by Peter. We have 4 main components which have to be tuned towards each other through the applied energy management system. We have a solar farm which is being developed and implemented in Q1 of 2021. We have the EV charging poles of the whole city of Arnhem, about 200 charging poles, where we are now establishing the real-time connection to gather all data real-time of the charging throughout the city. We have been analyzing 200,000 sessions already. So there has been a grouping of office chargers during office hours, the pillow chargers, people who come home and then go away the next day and charge overnight, and the short stay, in order to be able to make a pretty good forecast already on the demand of the EV chargers. Then we have a storage unit for 0.5 MWh, which has been delivered in the spring of 2020. And at this moment, that is being tested by the maintenance harbor, who is maintaining the cruise boats for the rivers, which were used to be fueled by their own diesel generators. Now they are all connected to the electricity, so-called cold ironing. And at this moment, the storage is being used to manage their peak loads. Next step will be beginning of 21, when the solar farm and the storage together will be able to provide green local electricity to all EV stations in Arnhem. So all public charging stations will use the green energy, and thereby we will also optimize the local generation and reducing peak demands. This is the first display of the interface as being developed at this moment by Open Remote. It is both forecasting and real-time monitoring the generation of energy, the state of charge in the storage, the usage of the energy by both the charging stations and by the harbor. And now we're going from virtual to applying the EMS into real practice. This is the storage, and this is also again a first view of the interface. Now, before going to talk about governance, I will go briefly through the second most advanced pilot, which is the city of Nottingham. In the city of Nottingham, there is a rather large city maintenance depot with over 40 cars, of which at this moment 24 are Nissan bidirectional capable electrical vehicles. There is 0.4 megawatt of solar, and there is 0.2 megawatt hours of storage. And here everything is occurring at one site. So behind 1 meter, the city of Nottingham generates its energy. When there's too much, it stores it, it uses it in their buildings, or it charges their cars. And these cars will be able to provide energy overnight if the knowledge, the forecast says that there will be enough for their mobility requirements and also for the building needs. In this case also, every electron is kept behind the meter, because the price that you pay in the UK for buying energy or feeding it back into the grid has a huge difference. So there is a let's say a nice alignation of your CO2 emission objectives and your finances. Now, in Arnhem, this is very different. In Arnhem, we have the devices inside the pilot, and all have their own their metering situation. And that has a severe impact on the alignment of using locally made energy and getting also a bit of a better price for that. Sometimes it can even be contrary, because the charge point operator of the EVs, the company Allego, would like to cooperate with the project, but also to of course to COVID, they have a severe financial situation, and the price of energy is priority number one, not the proximity or the fact that you use CO2 almost neutral energy from the nearby solar field. The nearby solar field is a big one. It's about 10 megawatts, but it's subsidy dependent, and thereby the energy will be injected into the grid. The same is for the battery and for the harbor. There is no financial stimulation in order to improve CO2 neutral or local or decongestion of your energy provision. Now, I think it's very good and very progressive that Arnhem and especially Peter there just took the initiative. We're going to do this. And why are we doing this? Also to get the discussion with the grid operator, with the national authorities going to see if we want to achieve a little bit our goals that we stand in the Paris Agreement. We need to change legislation. We need to show that we are supporting locally made and locally consumed, timely made and timely consumed clean energy, avoiding a grid which has to be built for only 10 or 15% of usage of the year. So if we get further with this kind of experiments, we can continue growing with local renewables, with clean mobility, with the built environment, taking care of that. But if we do not do this clever, then we will build a highway where most of the time only 10% of the lanes are filled. Now, that will hamper our sustainable development. Then in Nottingham, well, this was clear. You have one meter, you have one objective, you can control everything. Now, for cities, all cities are facing this kind of problems. All cities don't have the mandate, and as Peter was saying, the grid operator or the DSO is also not allowed to trade for well, the moment of using energy or give incentives. Therefore, you need to have projects with exemptions. You need to become a try-out garden and proof down. But it's difficult to make the next step to make that feasible. And when you have big things like a station or when or event center, in those cases it might be possible, and in near future it might be possible, but it's something where we really have to ask for and to show also what the added value is for the investment of your grid and for the growth towards a clean city model. That is basically the story where we stand now, and I'm pretty sure that in the first quarter, second quarter next year, we will have all components connected in both Arnhem and in Nottingham, and the other cities are lagging a little bit behind, but we will also start showing what we can, and we look for partners who are interested to make use of such technology and under what conditions it's well, is useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hugo. I haven't seen any questions in the Q&A box, so you can still feel free to ask your questions, and then we'll deal with them. I might add, Hugo, to your story that in the meantime, since CME is running, we're also thinking about the next project, which will be a neighborhood, where we want to keep the energy produced in the neighborhood, also in the neighborhood. So for using it for the houses, but also for charging of the cars in the neighborhood. But even then, the question about governance is even more trying, I would say, because then you have to deal with all the people in this neighborhood who are delivering their energy to you, which you want to use in this neighborhood again. If there are no questions for Hugo, I would like to give the floor to Heike van der Vechten, who is business manager at Firan, and Firan is a what do you call it? A company which is a subsidiary of the energy or the grid company, I think, Heike, and they are designing and realizing and operating grid solutions which are future-proof. Maybe you can add something to that, Heike, and start your presentation, please.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I will share my screen now. Let's see, here it is. So yeah, thank you for this introduction and also for having me here. I'm rather new to the project, I have to say, and that's fine. I think I would like to contribute. I'm indeed business manager of FireandreNetter, where we are focusing on solutions to work on optimizing existing connections. That's in principle what we do. As a part of the Alliander organization, we see that a lot of grid congestion areas are apparent, and many of the initiatives in terms of charging, in terms of for electric vehicles, in terms of solar developers, they see a grid that is very much already overloaded, and no new connections can be made in part of the Netherlands. We try to find existing connections and to see whether behind that meter, behind that connection, optimization of consumption, production, and perhaps storage can actually make the initiative happen in terms of new charging facilities, in terms of new solar parks. That's more or less what we do. I prepared some slides, as you can see, hopefully. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So to start off with just a bit more about, indeed, what Peter said, who we are and what we do. We are part of Alliander. Alliander is a network organization which has, of course, the regulated entity Liander, but also a number of entities under so-called new business, where we try to speeden up the energy transition by means of different initiatives, such as Kirion, who is really working on new concepts and a lot of electrotechnical expertise. Cantor measuring and transforming and storing energy. Entrance doing peer-to-peer trading of energy. And we as Firan working on decentral grids, on heat as well as electricity and also hydrogen. We see, of course, that a lot of ambitions are there. And a very difficult grid situation. All the grid operators working very hard to strengthen their grid, and some difficulties in getting there for some of the locations in the Netherlands. So electricity grids are under pressure. We as Firan can work in Liander area, but also Steden and Nexus and Endurus regions are possible for us to work on. So what we do, as I said, we optimize existing connections, and by doing so, we design, but also realize, manage, and maintain those connections. We do that for cable pooling, where we see solar and wind as a very logical combination. Existing wind parks, new solar parks, but also as a topic of today, charging hubs. So a lot of charging facilities are already installed and are planned for the coming future, with more and more electric vehicles on the road, meaning that a lot of the existing grid connections are not suitable and also cannot be fully strengthened and capacity to be added. So that means that you have to think behind the meter what kind of solutions are available. And we also work on off-grid networks, on islands such as Pampus and Markabad in the Netherlands, we have our energy system installed, and we optimize the energy flows. We have our own software with local hardware for actually operating those assets to match local electricity or heat demand with local energy supply. And we can also add storage either in the form of electricity or heat to that setting. And this is the same, we do design, realization, operation, and maintenance. So to get to the topic of today, charging hubs, we are now involved in a couple of situations where indeed, as I said, entities want to increase their amount of charging facilities and have no way to do so because the actual grid connection is not available. So you see that there's a challenge. There's storage, solar, wind, even a backup such as hydrogen or biogas. And this mixture can actually still provide the electricity chargers, the charging facilities for electric vehicles to be made possible. We call them stopcontacten op land. Maybe you've heard about that. So that's sockets on land, so to say. It's a term in parallel to the sockets on the not on land, on the sea. For large offshore wind parks, TenneT made stopcontacten op zee available, where almost literally a socket was made available for several wind parks to be connected to the actual electricity grid. So this kind of situation initiative is also very logical for the amount of electricity charges that have to be added in the coming decade. And therefore you need to balance, because to have solar, wind, and production, these chargers, whether it's smart charging or not, and as well as storage in the middle, you have to steer that, you have to monitor that, and you have to manage those energy flows. This is from a study that has been made by Kirion, one of the Leander companies, for Rijkswaterstaat, to look at exactly this, where there are already, or there will be, smart fast charging facilities, solar parks to be set up in several locations in the Netherlands. There is a connection already with the substation of the grid operator, and those solar parks as well as those charging facilities have to be combined behind one connection, the stopcontact, as we on land, as we just discussed. And then also the question that is, I think, very relevant here in this call: who should be the aggregator or the controlling entity to make sure that most benefits are being reaped from that specific location and that charging facility. We have thought about that already. It's not the final answer. It's really something in movement. But you could say that if the charging hub is a combination of storage, of solar, of the charging facilities, there's always a location owner, somebody that wants to exploit that location and wants to facilitate electric vehicles, for instance. There's always a grid operator with a grid connection, which is, as I said, many times too small to facilitate the charging facilities. And you have a charging operator, that's once the charge point operator that wants to monetize the charging facilities there with the electric vehicle fleet that has a specific turnaround over the day or over the week. And what we want to be as Firan is the entity that designs, realizes, and also manages those charging hubs. And of course, we're not the only one, so that can be, of course, be done by others as well. But there's always a local component to make sure that the grid connection is not being exceeded, to make sure that the storage, the solar, the wind, and also the charging facilities are being managed in such a way that the grid connection is not being exceeded. And in addition to that, you want to maybe optimize on a market to make use of low prices or high prices, depending on which way you are communicating with the grid. And that's something we cannot do as a grid operator, as Peter has already said, also from the government side, but also for grid operators, that's not allowed, and that's very rational also. We cannot play a role in the energy buying or selling. So to have the local part to be managed in such a way that you stay below the grid is perfectly fine, and something we do already. And then we have an API with a market entity that can provide steering with market signals, whether it's from a tenant in terms of ancillary services, or it's an imbalance market, or just a spot market price. That depends. But that's the way we would like to operate those charging hubs.
Could that be, for instance, a company like Exe, Heike?
Not exactly. I understand the question, and that's definitely part of could be part of the solution. Yes, Exe, and now they're called Entrance. That's one, and indeed also one of our sister companies. They do peer-to-peer trading. They can also not really trade in terms of make use of financial because they're part of the family as well. But what they can do is to make sure that there's an energy balance between the solar park developers, for instance, and the actual charging hub in terms of managing the electrons in an administrative way. We often work with a real market player, so that could be a Recoy, a Dexter, even a Vattenfall. So an entity that can actually trade electricity, and also Entrance cannot trade electricity. I would say.
Okay, thanks.
I think it's a bit awkward that Leander has the most interest in getting avoiding these extremes on the grid, but they cannot provide the incentives, or they cannot act on it because that's for the market. But the market is basically about money making.
Yep.
And that makes it rather complex to achieve your more societal goals. And I see that in a lot of projects. I mean, together with the Amsterdam Arena, we supported their project in doing grid regulation services, balancing both standby and actual doing it, which has a nice income for them. Instead of supporting the demand, which is accumulated when you have a soccer match, when you have 2 concerts, because you have the Ziggo Dome there and you have the AFAS, but that had a, well, it can also have a financial impact, but nothing towards better uptake of local renewables or remote renewables in the evening.
Do you have a question now, or just an observation, Hugo?
Question: How do we deal this, Heike?
Yes, I'm not sure if we have to deal with it from our perspective. The way this is formulated here, where an entity like Firan can optimize energy flows on a local scale to make use of a solar park or a solar system in the vicinity, to make use of maybe even an existing connection somewhere just a bit further away, to make use of smart charging possibilities and a storage system, of course, and maybe some backup. That is the core. So when you are able to optimize the energy flows with such a system, you already have more or less a business case, because it means that you can still operate your charging facilities. There's a relatively high price for charging electrons, and you don't have to upgrade your existing grid connection. And in many cases, well, not in all cases, but definitely many cases, it could already be a business case that is viable. And if you then...
I have a question about this, because what I say here, Heike, is that Firan also realizes fast chargers, storage system, and balancing locally. Does that mean that FireandRenetter invests in hardware?
No, well, for instance, Kenter, and this is a company that is, of course, also part of the Arnhem family. What they do also with metering systems, they can lease the assets. So that's a possibility. In many cases, we are not the owner of such a system. We can provide the energy management system to optimize that local energy system. So in many cases, we're not the owner.
Okay, yeah, clear.
If in a situation of Arnhem, we have a problem in grid congestion, would FireandRenetter be a good entity to go and steer and balance and store and actually negotiate prices with the different stakeholders?
Well, to negotiate prices with different stakeholders, I'm not sure if we are the entity. I would have to look into the case whether we could be or allowed to be the party, but we're open to take a look at that, to actually configure the right amount of solar and storage to be added to such a location in order to still do something, even though there is grid congestion there. That's definitely something we do, and we would like to think with you. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
And I think the market entity, that's what I wanted to say, is an add-on almost. That is, and market, I mean actually the interaction with market prices. So not market in terms of the charging facilities, because that's part of the charging hub, of course. But
you mean more like making money by putting some services on the grid, so now and again.
Exactly. By a balanced, responsible party, for instance, that's playing field.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you then look to, let's say, a company such as Spectral, I think there's a big overlap in what you're doing, or?
Yes, absolutely. It's always a good sign that there is competition. We have a different objective, I would say. We really emphasize on the grid connections. And Spectral emphasizes on local optimization and then also increasing prices, so optimizing prices, so to say, on the market. And the way we think is we start at the grid connection. That's really where we start, also as part of the Alliander family. But we cannot trade on the market. That's something that Spectral can do. So we work a lot with partners that can optimize prices on the market. So that's something we cannot do, and also we don't want to do, because we see that already optimizing a local energy system is very complicated and takes a lot of effort, and well, it's challenging as it's in itself.
Okay. If I may remark something, Heike, is that the solution or the way you work is, I could compare that, I think, to the Nottingham city pilot, because what you do is also behind the meter.
Yes.
And the big challenge we are facing actually is how can we do such a thing, but also using the grid and with different stakeholders. Is there something tell us about that?
Yeah, no problem. It's something we take a look at as well. And also, I think a good example is, you already said entrance as an exit, but now entrance as a good example. They did a project in Amsterdam, maybe you heard of that, in the harbor, where they did the shared energy platform project. And that is also in front of the meter. That's why I'm mentioning it. It was not simple, but I think I can explain it hopefully in a simple way. You have different industrial sites with flex capability, with production, with consumption, of course, within a certain quite a big area. And what I did was to take the different substations closest to this area they took that as the more or less the boundary of their region to actually do what they do in their energy platform, the boundary of their platform, so to say. And with entrance, they make sure that energy is being distributed directly between the different industrial players there, in order to optimize prices at first instance. That was the goal of their. That was the goal of the first goal of their shared energy platform. But also, and that's not being how do you call it, monetized yet, but that could be. They're looking into that in order to minimize the energy flows through those substations, being the part, the border of their platform, and that means that the grid is then being how do you call it, helped, and that is. I mention it because that's also in front of the meter, and you do things in front of the meter, but still you are helping the grid to stay below a certain level.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what we want to do in this neighborhood as well. Okay.
Okay.
But entrance is then facilitating this, but not actually making decisions, I would say, about who's getting what, or am I wrong?
It's indeed facilitating, but also how do you call it, disclosing the flex. So what they can do is with a market player, again, you need a market player also with entrance. But what they can directly do is peer-to-peer, facilitating peer-to-peer trade, and also the optimization of those prices in terms of flexibility. So if there's, for instance, a heat pump or a boiler, with using entrance, you can actually have a solar park somewhere and that boiler somewhere there, and then to connect those two directly and avoid a certain price, or you make use of a certain price.
Is that what they call EN to EON in the
Yes.
Netherlands?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah. I have a question here from Giacomo. Maybe let's see who can answer it, but he's asking that given that the Netherlands are forerunners for zero emission freight with the introduction of zero emission zones by 2025, how do you see the development of charging infra hubs for this specific sector? Do you see a role for the public sector here as well? Well, since I'm the only one from the public sector here, I suppose I should answer this.
Yes, please.
But yes, the answer is yes, because we are also we're already looking into that for the city distribution in Arnhem to realize a charging hub for freight vehicles, and that would be in the same area where we have our hydrogen refilling station. So yes, it's something we definitely want to stimulate as a public sector as well, because we have of course, the benefit of a very clean inner city, with also with less vehicles. That's our challenge for 2025.
How do you do then the last mile, Peter?
Yeah, that's the last mile. The last mile would be done by a logistics hub, with, of course, with zero emission vehicles, and we're already experimenting with freight bicycles in our inner city. But we were sorry, I interrupted, I think, Heike. So maybe you can go on, Heike, with.
Okay. No, I'm perfectly fine with having a discussion now. But I can also continue with my. I don't think it's very relevant. I just added it. What we have in terms of our grid control platform. But I think it's up to you whether you want to me to discuss this. Because I think the time is limited.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, basically, Peter is searching for a solution that could be rolled out. Let's say you have a solar park and touching an industrial area, a neighborhood, etc., etc. How can the knowledge and the technology, but also the finances and the climate goals, be optimized for Peter's situation? How can we get there?
Yeah, but that's It's actually also a sort of general question to our public today as well. Is who would like to, or who do you think should take this role? Because what you're describing here, Heike, this grid control platform, it's if I look at it like this is here, it looks exactly like what we've developed for what we call the IEMS, the Interoperable Energy Management System.
Yeah,
it does exactly the same things as I see here. I think.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So again, I think then it's maybe more relevant to actually discuss this very good question than to dive into this these sheets.
But I can use this sheet in another way, maybe.
Yes.
Because if you look at this grid control platform, you see these how do you call these regulators which you can move.
Yeah.
And the question today is actually who is authorized or maybe the best in place for you moving these regulators if you are in a situation where the different components are on different sites in the city.
Okay.
But actually, that's the question, because when I was saying who is turning the knobs, I actually meant these regulators like what you have here: sustainability, cost, autonomy, reliability. So that's actually the question I want to answer now, and maybe also at the Polish conference in December, or the end of November, the end of this month, and the beginning of December, because this question keeps coming back all the time.
Okay.
So that's why we were sort of probing you also for, hey, entrance or another party, or, an energy cooperative, like we have in Arnhem. We have the Rijn-IJssel Energie Corporatie, maybe some party like that. I don't know. That's the question we would be trying to answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Who are you asking?
Actually, I'm asking that to anyone who's listening now.
Anybody, okay.
If they have some ideas about that. Because we three have been discussing this now, but of course I would very much like others to say what they think of this as well. Is there anyone who would like to react on this question?
I want to bounce the question back to you, Peter.
No.
Imagine that you in Arnhem, you are going to be the energy champion. You're going to take care that each kilowatt hour, which is made and used within 2 kilometers, and which is proven, made by clean sources, gets a cent on the kilowatt hour. Instead of the 23 cents for households, you pay 1.5 cents less. Do you think that such a market mechanism would enforce automatically this kind of regulation, what you want?
I am not sure, because I think, first of all, like I said in the beginning, the local authority, like the city of Arnhem, does not want to go back to 30 years ago, when we were in charge of the whole energy network and energy production and stuff like that. So now what we're actually looking for now is, with your question, I think you're also implying that maybe there's a positive business case to be had with this system. And I'm not really sure that it is possible at this moment.
I'm not saying that you should do it. The local government should definitely not do that. But I'm saying that Peter is a lobbyist and he takes care that we get a tax reduction based on distance and on CO2 emission of 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Do you think that the market then will arrange these Q&A services?
Yeah, if there's somehow a positive business case to be had, then they will. Of course, first we have to invite them, but I think they will be actually pleased to do so. But what I don't know if you were present, but I had a discussion with I think with NG about this, and what they said is they tried to do something similar in Almere in the Netherlands. But they could not make a positive business case, and it was mostly dependent on the high cost of storage. I have a question here for maybe for you, Hugo. Do you foresee new regulations being put in place to allow for market mechanisms that would incentivize optimization on those issues such as grid reliability, cost, sustainability, etc.?
I hope so. I mean, energy is so much regulated. So we talk about the market, which is a virtual market. From my kilowatt hour of 23 cents, only 5 or 6 cents is really market. So that addresses only tax and grid cost. So I hope that we add sustainability in such a way that the market gets around. And I also hope that Leander can make me pay more if I use the grid when it's very busy. Like the government, Rijkswaterstaat, wanted to make us pay on the highway if it's very busy. I mean, so I do hope that.
Okay. Guys, it's time now, and I want to thank you for contributing to this discussion. And I also want to thank Polis for hosting this discussion today. And there weren't many questions about this, but probably if people think about it, they can come up with some questions. You also feel free, please, to contact us later on through our email, which is in the presentations, I think. And if you have any questions later on, please do so. And now I want to thank you for your attendance, and I hope to see you, of course, at the Polis conference in Arnhem, Nijmegen, virtually then, in the end of November and the first days of December. Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. Thanks, Heike, and thanks, Hugo. Thank you for cooperating.
Thank you very much to everyone. I think, Peter, it was a very difficult question. So
yeah, obviously.
It's certainly food for thought. Yeah. And hopefully we'll find the answers sooner than later. Thanks a lot for your participation, everyone.
Thanks very much, Sabina. See you next time.
Have a good day. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Giacomo. Bye, Heike.
Bye.